What is up, everybody? Welcome on in to the First Round Fantasy Podcast. I am your host, Jacob Bartley, joined by my co-host, Justin Morsauce. What's going on, Justin? We got a lot to talk about this week, but how you doing, sir?
Yeah, last week was rough. This week might be even more rough. So we do have a lot to talk about. A couple of nice games last week and a couple hopeful games coming up this week that we'll talk about. So I'm excited as always, but this is hard. This is a hard week for me.
It is a difficult week. And why was last week hard? You had a couple of tough losses?
A couple of unfortunate bad beats. And so we were talking before the show, and it's like you have a great game, but you match up against the top dog of the week, and nothing you could have done to your lineup would have mattered. So it's like an automatic L. You know, like if I could take a lesson going forward, like I should have started a wide receiver over this wide receiver, it would be a learning curve. But this was just a loss that I couldn't do anything about, and I really needed the W. So, you know, weeks like that happen. You try to curb them as much as possible, but yeah, this one's going to be more difficult with all the bye weeks. This is the worst of the year, right?
Yeah, they're calling it Bye-Mageddon, other YouTube channels and podcasts, but that's a fitting name because I looked ahead on like Sunday. I looked ahead and literally in one of my leagues, our dynasty league, my whole starting lineup except like two players was on bye, and I'm like, oh my goodness! And I'm starting, like I told you this last night, I'm starting Trey Sermon and Khalil Herbert as my starting running backs, and then my wide receiver in my flexes I have Callaway and Mooney. So it's like those guys are cool for like dart throws, but they're not what you want to like sustain your starting lineup. So it's gonna be an interesting week.
For those who missed it, and even myself, what's wrong with Khalil? Is Demont coming back? Is that why you're not too excited starting him?
Well, the point is, like, look, I like what I've seen from Khalil Herbert so far, but ideally, he's not your starting running back on your team, is what I'm saying. Is like, yeah, he's cool. Like, I should feel good that I have him this week because of all the bye weeks, but he's playing Tampa Bay. And so it's a screwed situation. But also the problem is, and why we're going to talk about cuts today, is that when this happens, and you might say, why don't you just pick up some waiver wire players and fill out your roster? You can't, because all your starting players are on bye and they're on your bench and you can't drop them. So it's going to get tricky. I mean, I don't know if we'll bring this up again, but I do want to warn people. I personally wouldn't make a bunch of crazy trades just to avoid this week. Just ride it out with your lineup, honestly, because I could easily go try to trade my guys who are on a bye to get players that are playing this week so I can have a solid starting lineup. But I'm not willing to lose those guys who are on a bye just to win 1 week. And some people might be. Some people play, nope, it's a week-to-week game. I have to win this week. So it just depends on your situation. But I personally wouldn't go crazy with that. You can if you need to, but I definitely wouldn't, go crazy with it. Justin, real quick, I want to ask you before we get started here. We hear all these Deshaun Watson rumors coming around yesterday. It was first reported that talks have intensified between the Dolphins and the Texans, that they would send Deshaun Watson to Miami. Obviously, Miami would have to give up multiple first-round picks, maybe players. Reportedly, Texans don't want Tua back in the trade, and Tua would get sent to the Washington football team in this scenario. But the last thing reported is somebody close to the situation said that the rumors are false. But as much as I take the rumor itself with a grain of salt, I take some guy saying it's false with a grain of salt as well, because we've seen, because some legitimate reporters reporting the initial report, and then we got another reporter saying it's false. So who are we supposed to believe? The false part could be the wrong one. So how are you viewing the situation? Are you trying to get one of these players or get rid of one of these players if you have them?
I would say that if I'm a team desperate for a quarterback, there hasn't been too many injuries outside of Russell Wilson to the top 10, top 12
True.
QBs, I think. So it's not like a dire, stressful situation. But like if you're streaming the low-end types, you might take a flyer on Watson because we know he's elite. So if he can get back in shape, and I don't have a problem with any team that he goes to. I would be happy to literally start him. If not the first week he gets starting role, but maybe the second just to feel it out. So
Yeah.
I would try to. Tua is still a wait and see in Dynasty. He's a must hold, obviously, but
Of course,
you're not
yeah.
going to start him in a redraft league, anyways. But it's still we were talking about this at the beginning of the year when he was holding out and he refused to play. I think for Houston, and it's like, where else is he going to go? The interesting part is they don't want him back, and he might, or that they don't want Tua back in exchange. I always thought it might have been a Hurts for Watson swap, and I'm surprised we haven't heard that, which that would be cool because both those QBs are nice, relevant fantasy players. But I'm keeping an eye out. In Dynasty, I'm holding them all. In redraft, I might take a flyer on Watson, and that's about it.
Yeah, very true. We got a comment from Jake Berlin. This is the guy who actually does our graphics and all our stuff, our intros and all that. What up, Jake? Willing to cut? How about all of them? Them all. I roll. Exactly, man. It is a tough week. And there's a lot of disappointments too there so far this season. Obviously, there's some surprises that, like if you hit on a Mike Williams or something like that, but there's a lot of disappointments going on too, guys that you're willing to cut. And we'll talk about this in a second because I have some guys that I already cut and I'm just bringing them up again because I want to mention to other fantasy players out there that they can cut these guys. But the Watson situation, it's tough because most people are playing in a one quarterback league, right? So cool. If you can stash him on your bench and you have the room and see what happens, do it. I'm sure he's already grabbed up in every league by now after yesterday, which should have been holding on to him anyway if you really thought that a trade was possible. But obviously, where it would have huge implications is in Superflex, but not a lot of people playing that yet, so we won't get too much into that. Really quick. Oh no, let's get into the players we can finally cut. Let's do it. So the reason I brought this up is because first of all, a lot of disappointing players so far this season, and you have to put together a starting roster this week. In that league I was talking about, I only have one other player on my bench who I could play. Like if I have an injury or a COVID situation and one of my starting players is out, I only have one other player I can slot in on my bench. So I might have to make some pickups or drops. So that's interesting. Here's some guys that I was willing to cut bait with. I mean, I think a lot of people have Ronald Jones. I mean, I know he's playing this week, but what can you do with him? Leonard Fournette has taken that job. I'm done with Ronald Jones. Even in Dynasty, I'm done with him for now. I mean, whatever. Maybe he can play somewhere else next year. I can't afford to wait for it. So I'm done with Ronald Jones. And another big one that people, I mean, this one's tough. And I understand why some people would say hold, but I cut bait with Robbie Anderson this week. I'm done with him. The funny thing is he got 11, 7, and 11 targets, but he hasn't done anything all year, even when Sam Darnold was playing well and he was supporting other wide receivers. Robbie Anderson did nothing. And I know it's crazy, right? Like you see him, he's projected for like 12 points every week, but I can't do it anymore, especially because I don't have room to hold him when I need to put together a starting lineup. Justin, what are maybe some guys that you are willing to cut bait with that maybe some people aren't?
The big talk around town is obviously Allen Robinson, and I love him more than the next guy. That situation is just so bad, and that rookie quarterback. We hope good things for him, but it's been ugly, and he's still getting all right targets, but it's not translating to anything. And then couple that with a bye week hell where you're going to be having the Bears play the Bucs, and we know the Bucs just destroy the line. No one runs on them. Everyone gets blitzed by them, and even not blitzed, but the quarterback gets hurried every play, it seems, when I watch them. So couple that with a rookie quarterback, Allen Robinson doesn't seem like a great fix. The problem is with people like Robbie Anderson and A-Rob, who else are you going to pick up that justifies, like, even in a bad game, Allen Robinson got 7 targets, Robbie got 11 targets. I'm not going to find a player on the waiver wire that's going to have potential for 11 targets. Like, when I'm looking for fill-ins at this level, it's like I'll take 11 targets every week, and maybe they just bunked out. Then 4 targets, 3 targets, and a random touchdown. It's just a PPR game for me. But that's a philosophy style of play, I'd say. But I'm having difficulties dropping Robbie Anderson. I definitely think you can let go of Ronald Jones, like you said, sadly, but it's good because Fournette's working all the work, so that's also good. Then a split backfield, but I haven't had struggles with cutting players because I think everyone's getting better at fantasy football and rostering a lot better, so there's not a lot of options out there. So you're not cutting any running backs that are lead backs. You're not cutting running backs that suck, but you need no one's cutting. I mean, Kenyon Drake, is he being held in your opinion, or do you?
I think he is. I mean, especially because he had a good game last week after the new coaching regime took over and all that. So he's being held.
Hold. Yeah. Do you think he's an individual hold, or is he a hold only for the Josh Jacobs owner?
No, I think he's an individual hold. I only have him in one league, and I don't have Josh Jacobs, and I've had to start Kenyon Drake some weeks just due to injuries and buys. So he's definitely a hold. I wouldn't say he's a starting running back, but I could see. Look, this week, like I said, when you got people like me starting Trey Sermon in a 10-team league, that I guarantee you people are starting Kenyon Drake.
Yeah, you just have to make these hard choices, and a lot of it runs around your team. You have to always evaluate what you need when these bye weeks come up.
Yeah, and a situation like Robbie, and I think for this topic, for me, Robbie Anderson was the perfect example because I could say Ronald Jones is easy, right? You don't even think about it. Boom, cut. It's done. He hasn't. But Robbie Anderson is one you got to struggle with, and to me, this is the problem. I have injured players and handcuffs that I can't drop, right? Also, my quarterback is on a bye week, so now he becomes a bench player that I can't drop, and it's Justin Herbert. So, it's not like I'm streaming Sam Darnold and he's on a bye and I could drop him, right? It's Justin Herbert, so I can't drop him. So then I'm stuck. I'm like, okay, who am I going to drop? And I'm looking at it, and it has to be Robbie Anderson. So that's kind of how, and not that I want to, but it's just the way it is. And I'm not going to lose sleep overnight if he starts going off. I had made peace with that decision, so I'm good with it. We got some comments real quick. I know Justin already addressed them, but clap nuts, right? Start Kirk or Tim Patrick at the flex. Justin said Kirk, and I'm guessing that's Christian Kirk, right?
Yeah.
I got to look at the matchups. What do they got going on here? So Arizona's playing Houston. Okay. Arizona's playing Houston, and playing Cleveland. Okay. Yeah, I would go Kirk as well. I think that has potential for more offense, more scoring. So I would go Kirk as well. And then we have Bambo, who writes, in half PPR, would you guys rather have Amon-Ra or Bateman? Ooh.
I love this question, actually.
That is tough. It's closer than you would think, to be honest. Yeah. What do you think about this one?
I go Amon all day. Less
really?
He's getting good targets, and Bateman has some competition over there. It's not like they're hurting for wide receivers, surprisingly. So I like Amon-Ra overall.
Look, I really like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I loved him in the preseason, and he wasn't getting much hype. You drafted him in our Dynasty League. I like him a lot, but I would have to go Bateman just because Lamar is on fire, and he's having the best passing season he's ever had, and it's just a better offense overall. More touchdowns to be scored. I gotta go Bateman.
So let's make it spicy for our boy Bamboo. Let's book it down. We don't even have to put a number on it. We just go most points, and we can play our style PPR, or do you want to go his style half PPR?
Either. Well, it doesn't matter. I think it'll be similar either way. So we'll go our scoring. Yeah.
All right. I'll go Amon-Ra scores more than Bateman this week.
All right. I'll go Bateman scores more than Amon-Ra this week. We're gonna book it down. There we go. I'll go ahead and make sure I get that into the tracker there. We got, and you said you had Robbie as well. Who are they playing this week? I mean, I just talked about dropping Robbie, so I'm probably not gonna be starting him. But Carolina, I'm surprised they're not on bye because everybody's on a bye. I mean, I would just from what I said about Robbie Anderson recently, I would avoid him. I would start one of the other guys for sure. We also got Gio Ramos in the house. What up, Gio? Thanks for stopping by, man. Leaving us a comment. Ertz value rest of season. Wow, this is something I'm glad that came up because it's a pretty hot topic in fantasy, and it kind of missed our podcast last week, and we probably would have forgot about it this week. So that's a good question. Justin, how are you feeling about the Zach Ertz situation?
I'll take any tight end that starts in the league for a high-powered offense, and I'm not sure. I have to look up Max Williams' injury status and how long he's supposed to be out. But
I'm pretty sure he's done, but
Yeah,
it was a pretty serious injury. That's the whole reason why they traded for him.
Did he break his ankle? Is that what happened to him?
He suffered he may have suffered a season-ending knee injury in week 5.
So automatically, Ertz rest of season top 10 easily for me.
Yeah.
I can even consider top 7. But if you have him as of now, set and forget.
Absolutely, and that's the great thing about this is, and Dallas Goedert just got activated off IR again. This is a beautiful situation for both tight ends. I love both of them going forward now. Like, these guys were, at this point, they were both out of the top 10, as far as who you're starting each week. Now they both could be in the top 10. And I agree with Justin. I wouldn't go as far as top 5 for Ertz, but I would say top 10 for sure, because look at what Max Williams was doing, first of all. He's playing with Kyler Murray. It's going to be great. And this is a good point. That's especially in the passing game, Kyler Murray over Jalen Hurts. And you can't really debate that. So that's a good thing to keep your eye out for. But yeah, Zach Ertz should be rostered and started unless you have one of these top tier guys. But even at that, throw him on your bench and you have some more value on your roster overall. Justin, did you have any other players that you're willing to cut bait with, or are we good to move on?
Nah, I think the next 2 weeks will be big, but right now I think we covered the good players that are mentioned a lot.
Yeah, and there will be some other heavy bye weeks, but this week is just crazy. And it's not just how many teams, it's which specific teams are on bye week, because there's a lot of fantasy relevant players on bye week for sure. All right, so really quick, some little injury news here. So it is Thursday, so we got some Thursday night football tonight, which is super exciting. I love it. Right when I get off work, there's a game on. It's beautiful. But we got for sure out tonight is Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and Baker Mayfield. This changes the whole outlook of the whole fantasy matchup for me, because I think it's just going to be a low-scoring game, to be honest. And so I think you should be cautious with almost all players on both sides. Maybe not. Maybe Noah Fant is the safest player in this, but it's a tough situation. But it hurts that these two guys are injured when there's so many buys going on. Things we got to keep our eye on: questionable players. Antonio Gibson with the shin injury, that's not looking good to me. I don't think he's going to play. Even if he does play, I almost chose him as my fool's gold if he played, because he's just playing injured basically, and I think he needs to rest up. Kadarius Toney with his ankle, Tyreek Hill quad, Latavius Murray ankle, Paris Campbell foot, T.Y. Hilton quad, Terrace Marshall concussion, Chris Conley neck, Dak Prescott, he's on a bye week, but he has the calf, so keep an eye on that for next week. And Alex Collins, unfortunately, with his hip and glute after Chris Carson was put on IR, and Alex Collins was looking like a solid replacement, but keep an eye out for him. He might be missing this week as well. All right, let's move on to our favorite waiver wire pickups of the week. And what we put in the notes is whether you got them or not, because by the time we do our podcast, the waivers have processed. But the biggest waiver wire ad was D'Ernest Johnson, and he's probably been picked up in every league because he's going to basically be the starting running back for the Cleveland Browns. And even though, like I said, it might be a low-scoring matchup, you got to take touches where you can get them. And I wish I could have picked up D'Ernest Johnson in my Dynasty League this week, but it just didn't work out. Justin, do you have any other notable waiver wire pickups? This might be the lightest waiver wire week of all, and on the week that we have so many bye weeks.
Yeah, it's a weird week for sure. Usually at this time, all the major hits are already taken, so you're just filling in bye weeks, and that's exactly what I'm seeing here. Aside from D'Ernest, basically, if Latavius sits out, you may want to run Devontae, but it seems like the whole entire waiver wire stemmed to picking up backup quarterbacks, not backup
Yes.
backups, but like outside the top 12, top 15. Like you might have to start Tua, you might have to start Winston, you might start Darnold. I think Carr can be argued. I don't know where he ranks right now, but he's been playing pretty well. But you have to go deep, all the way down to Teddy Bridgewater, possibly. So those are the waiver wires I like. I had a couple issues myself, so I wanted Carr, but I'll settle for Darnold against the Giants. That seems like an awesome play this week, given all the buys from Cousin to Dak, et cetera, et cetera. So nothing that's like a must grab outside of Dearness. Then if you're a Hunt or Chubb owner, I hope you were able to get him, because that's a weird situation you had to deal with.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing is I don't see many other than Dearness, any notable running backs or wide receivers that you can be adding. I mean, it's guys that we've talked about before. You're just going to have to pick up anybody that is going to see maybe 4 or 5 targets, but it is the quarterbacks. And I had to replace quarterbacks in 5 leagues this week, in 5 leagues. And it's insane. I was looking at all the same guys. I was looking at Winston. I was looking at actually Tua, because he had a good game last week and he's playing Atlanta. So you could consider Tua. Even though he's a little banged up as always.
I have a thought now that we're coming up to the pickups, because we're talking wide receivers, and every year there's always the bottom tier of cycle. Like, okay, I'll drop Kirk today, I'll pick him up next week when I need him. But with T.Y. Hilton coming back, it makes me think if he's worthy of a roster spot. If not, does it just devalue Pittman? And then how do you go about? I still don't give up on Pittman, but I think T.Y. affects it for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And hold on, Bambo. If you're still there, we'll get to your trade question after this segment. All right, we're just going to finish this up real quick. But yeah, so last week, I lost Russell Wilson in one of our leagues, and it's hasn't been pretty. I picked up Tyler Heineke last week because he was playing the Chiefs, and the Chiefs have been one of the worst defenses against the pass. He didn't play well. He got like 9 points. I lost by like 15 points. What my other guy I was going to pick up that same week was Derek Carr, and he went off for 30. I would have won if I picked up Derek Carr, and I'm so mad. And the reason I did this is because, Heineke has the better matchup. Everybody else says start Heineke, but Derek Carr, his matchup's not so good, so I'm going to avoid it. I just realized I'm never doing that again. I'm going with my gut feeling on who I think is going to have the better game, and I thought it was going to be Derek Carr. So I dropped Heineke as soon as I could. As soon as midnight hit on Tuesday morning, cut Heineke. And then I got Derek Carr, and I'm like, look, I'm just going to ride with Derek Carr until Russell Wilson gets back, because he's playing very, very well. And I think the team is extra motivated right now. So if you can get Derek Carr, if you're missing Russell Wilson, or if you even just need a quarterback this week, I would definitely pick up Carr. He started off so hot, and I think he's going to continue that.
And shout out to all the Raider fans that we play with, because of you, I can't even get him on a bye week. He shouldn't be rostered.
That's very true.
Every single, but he's playing really well, so maybe he should.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point too. But even like going into the season, he's not supposed to be a top 12 fantasy quarterback, and all of our buddies, they draft him because they're Raider fans. And honestly, if I was a Raider fan, I'd draft him too. Alrighty, so let's get. So I did want to talk about though other bye week replacements, and I don't necessarily mean waiver wire pickups. I mean all these guys who have been sitting on your bench that you never even thought about starting, that now have to step up for you and perform big. And I think this is actually important, because I like this, because we have guys that we stash speculative ads. Like I've had Bateman on my roster forever, guys like AJ Dillon, and it's like you're never going to start them, but this week you can. And a few names, what I like to do, I go through my rosters and I like, what am I actually doing? So these are some guys I'm starting in replacement of some of my guys on bye week. So I have Marquez Callaway. I know he had that Hail Mary touchdown last week, but I still look. Who else is catching balls there in New Orleans? The other receiver is banged up as well. I'm not sure if he's back. Bateman, Rashad Bateman, Khalil Herbert, of course. Darnell Mooney, I'm loving him this week just because, you got to start some guys. Hunter Renfrow, we've been talking about him all season long. He's a beautiful fill-in this week. And then I wish I had AJ Dillon instead of Trey Sermon this week, I would feel so much better starting AJ Dillon. So if you have AJ Dillon and you need that feel good about starting him. Not that you would on most weeks, but he's definitely a possible fill-in this week. Do you have any guys like that, Justin, that maybe are on your bench that you're forced to start this week?
I'm actually happy because this is the first week I don't have to choose between Edmonds and Connor. Just start them both. I don't care. And, I can justify it a little bit because Edmonds had a couple of down weeks. Connor's pretty touchdown or bust. So I'm going to play the odds and say both of them do well this week. We'll give Edmonds like 6 catches and we'll give Connor a touchdown at the goal line. So I also love having to play like, I'm a wide receiver guy. I always have a bunch of them, so I never get to play guys like Corey Davis, guys like Jacoby Myers, and I'll get to him later. But I'm not happy I have to start him, but I get to play him, so I'm going to root for him. It's a cool aspect. But going on Corey Davis, I think we underestimated how bad the Jets are just in general.
Yeah,
I wanted big things from him. He's getting good targets. I think it may just be, maybe second half turnaround, but right now it's just flex worthy at best. This is a side rant right there, but I love Jacoby Myers. I'm happy I can get to play him.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of cool. It's like you like these guys, but you never get to start them. So that is, I guess, the silver lining of the bye weeks, right? You get to rely on these bench guys that you actually believe in. There's a reason why you're rostering them. All right. We'll get into our dark horses and fool's gold, but let's address Bambo's trade question. I love trade questions. So Bambo says, now that Kamara is back and my RB depth is pretty bad outside of Kamara, so I was thinking of doing Kamara and Boyd for Lenny and Mixon. So Leonard Fournette and Joe Mixon. Should I hold Kamara and just run with Moss at RB2? Interesting.
That's hard. Yeah, I think if you trade Kamara, that's a pretty decent package for him. I mean, it's hard to say I don't trust Fournette because he's been playing pretty well. But I almost want to say I should get like a tier above. But he's been playing really well. Mixon's been playing really well. I don't think you can get a better package considering if you really want to play. But I don't trade Kamara for anything other than eliteness as well. So it's hard. It's hard for me to do. What would you do?
Yeah, that is a tough question. If your third running back is like a guy who's completely useless and after Moss, because I look in this situation, you have Kamara, you just got to ride with Moss, right, as your RB2. But if you don't have any other running back depth after that, I would consider this trade. But again, to me, any moment, Leonard Fournette can go back to doing what he was doing a few weeks ago or last season. And then Mixon, Justin and I have both talked since the preseason. We are fearful of Mixon. He's a little injury prone. So I would be worried about this. And you'd have to give Boyd up. Boyd hasn't been doing much, but he's still a hold and a guy you got to start when you need to. So it's a tough question. I personally would probably hold if that were me and just ride with Zach Moss, to be honest.
I'm looking at running backs overall PPR this season total, and it's awful, man. Like, there's some big dogs out there, specifically Henry, and then once you get past like 10, 11, it's just like Melvin Gordon's in the top 20, Edmonds is in the top 20,
That's
top 15,
insane.
like, and they're not doing great. So if you have a top dog, Leonard and Mixon are top 10, almost fringe. So that's tough. I wish you told me like Swift and James Robinson. I'd feel better with those two. You know what I mean? Just like,
no, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Itch me the wrong way.
No, absolutely. And so Bambo writes in, so my RBs are Kamara, Moss, Gaskin. Oh, is Gaskin on the COVID-19 list? I wasn't aware of that. If he is, I think he's talking about Damian Williams because he wrote it before.
Yeah.
So Gaskin, Damian Williams, and DJ Dallas. So obviously Damian Williams on the COVID list. Gaskin, I don't trust Gaskin. Like, he had that one good game, the game that Waddle should have had, like I said. But and then he didn't do anything last week when they were in a high passing game script. So yeah, man, that is tough. Again, I would probably stick with Kamara, but it just depends. It really just depends on your preference. And I'm wondering, so if this is the same half PPR league? Oh, it's half PPR. If it's the same league you were talking about, Amon-Ra and Bateman, I would maybe consider this because obviously you rely on Kamara a lot in PPR. So it can go either way. But if I, you ask us these questions to give you a definitive answer, I'm gonna hold. What about you, Justin?
I'm gonna fish around for just the top tier, and then I'm gonna play one more week to see if some injuries happen, and then I'll trade. If nothing changes, I'll actually make that trade because
I feel you. That's dangerous though, because if Mixon and Fournette go off for 30 each, then it's over.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you have the 30 chance as much as Mixon hurting himself, so it's like the worst thing I would do is trade, and then they get injured, and I'm like, I want my Kamara back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But just as a side note, you know how crazy this year is, and I want to go back, but in the top 20, Tony Pollard is the 19th best running back. He's RB2 right now. That's literally insane. Based off stats, like in PPR, like the running back situation, Dalvin's been banged up. CMC's been banged up. If you start Moss, he's still considered an RB2 based off statistics in PPR leagues. So I don't know. Like Saquon's banged up, obviously. He's not coming back for a while. Carson fell off. Clyde is a bum. It's running backs are just nuts, dude. It's really Demont went out. Like it's hard. It's hard to make these trades because running backs get beat up. But what did you say right here? Yeah. Hold Kamara, dude. If that's what your gut's telling you, hold Kamara.
Yeah. So Bambo goes on. Yeah, I was thinking holding Kamara to see how he does this week. If he puts up 25 plus in half PPR format, I'll hold, and Moss will be. Yeah. I mean, I'm relying on Moss in a league too, and I know he's on a bye week this week, so Kent doesn't help this week. But I need Moss to do some big things too, or at least stay solid. Just keep putting up 12 points a game, and I'll be happy with that because that's better than what I was expecting from him for sure. All right, let's get into our dark horses and our fool's gold. Let's review last week's real quick. So. Last week, Gabe had Javonte Williams. Let me see here. I didn't see Javonte Williams' performance. I know he didn't do great, but let's see if we consider this a success or not. So, yeah, he didn't do much. I would say, 11 for 53. It's probably a miss, but it's one of those. Again, it could be a hit or a push, I should say. But again, we're giving you these dark horses because we think they're going to go off. And Javonte Williams did not go off. So that's definitely probably a miss when you consider what we want our dark horses to be. And then Joe chose T. Higgins, and that's definitely a miss. He put up 7.4 points in full PPR. And then, Justin, you chose Chase Edmonds. How'd he do, man?
Not so good as far as a dark horse. 8 points. He's just... Over the weeks, he's just lost all carry attempts to Connor. But the game script was pretty whack because they played Cleveland. They were dominating. Why are you going to run Edmonds when you have just a big back like Connor? So it was a game script. They just got whooped. So we'll see if the same thing happens against Houston. But I missed on that one.
Yeah, I wasn't on last week, so I didn't have one. But yeah, those were 3 ones that we should say missed. But maybe the Fool's Gold did a little bit better. But let's get into our dark horses for this week. And I'll go ahead and start with, and we mentioned him a few times here. I'm going to go with Rashad Bateman of the Baltimore Ravens. And I know you don't have a Twitter, Justin, but last week I tweeted out, who is anybody thinking about starting Rashad Bateman? I would stay away week 1, but I think he's going to pop soon is what I tweeted. And I actually got like so many random people on Twitter responding, and it was kind of cool. And it was like a Saturday night tweet. I think I'm going to start doing that, like my hot take Saturday night tweet, because I got a lot of interaction actually. And a lot of people were like, what are you talking about? He's going to go off. I'm starting him. And I'm like, he's been injured all preseason, the first 5 weeks. He hasn't had time to like work with Lamar much. I just like last week there weren't a lot of bye weeks, so you definitely had better options. But now that we're coming into this week with the bye weeks and with, like I said, Lamar's on fire. We got he had more targets than Hollywood Brown last week. He had 6 targets, which tied for the team high with Mark Andrews. Not saying that's the end all be all or deciding factor, but that's something you really like to see. They're playing Cincinnati, who hasn't been terrible against the pass, but this game, it's a division game. I think this is going to be a shootout. And we've seen Lamar step his game up as far as pass catching goes. They drafted Rashad Bateman in the first round, late first round. He's that kind of talent. And I had been holding on to this guy in almost every league that I'm in, stashing him in my IR spot. And now I'm in my dynasty league where literally almost my whole entire team starting lineup is on a bye week, and I'm relying on Rashad Bateman. And I think you can too. If you have crazy bye weeks, you don't have guys you want to drop, and you got Rashad Bateman sitting there on your bench, I think you can start him, and I think he's gonna beat his projected 9.7 points on Yahoo.
For sure, love the pick. It's happy that he's back on the field, and I think he's just going to get integrated more. Whether he's going to do better than Hollywood overall, that's a different story, but why can't he be a good wide receiver 2 ahead of Watkins? I agree.
Good point. And no shade against Hollywood. You're already starting Hollywood for sure, but I just think some people aren't aware of the emergence or what could be an emergence from Rashad Bateman. So
he was
start him if you have to.
He was going to be up there with predictions of one of the best rookie wide receivers, and then he wasn't able to start the league. So It's a nice undercover pick. So I love it. I personally, great pick.
Awesome. All right, Justin, what do you got for us for your dark horse of week 7?
Dark horse week 7. I'm having some issues.
I know your pick. It is Jakobi Meyers.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I don't know where my spreadsheet went, but yes, Jakobi Meyers. I told you I was going to get to him. He's an amazing player overall. He's like a Swiss Army knife for those guys. 2-point conversions, throwing a TD pass here, running a lot of routes, getting good targets, but he's never got to the end zone. They play the Jets. I know we pick on the Jets all the time, but something's just in the air tonight. Like, he's going to get 6-7 plus targets, 80 plus yards, and a touchdown under his belt, and you're going to love the fact that you were forced to start him on a bye. Maybe 12-team deeps were going to hit him, but 10-team might not have played him so far this year. So Jakobi Meyers is my dark horse. I think he's projected for 15.6, which is pretty high. So I think they're considering the bye weeks and the matchup. So I go above that. He's going to do great this week. Start with confidence.
Yeah, I really like Jakobi Meyers, and I don't know about you, but I see in the notes you put first touchdown coming this week. Did you watch him get his touchdown and then there was a flag on the play? I feel so bad for this guy. He has something like the most targets without a touchdown or something, or the most receptions without a touchdown in NFL history or something like that. And they designed a play for him to score his touchdown because they were in the red zone. He's all happy. The teammates are like, patting him, and then they call a flag and it got called back. And then somebody else scored a touchdown. I felt so bad for the man.
This is the week. There's not going to be any issues. It's going to happen. Yeah. We're going to watch it. We're going to love it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I know I traded him to you in one of our leagues. And yeah, he's a PPR guy, man. And, we play in most of our leagues are full PPR. So he can definitely get it done for you, especially if it's in full PPR. And look, he's definitely the number one there. I don't think there's any debate about that. And we know Mac Jones is extremely accurate and can at least support him. So that's not a bad call, Justin. All right, let's get into our Fool's Gold for this week. And the Fool's Gold, and I should kind of reiterate what our goal is with these segments for maybe some first-time listeners or someone like that. Our Fool's Gold are players that we just want to raise a red flag, give you a little bit of a warning to sometimes we're telling you to bench these guys. Sometimes we're telling you, hey, just lower your expectations. And we're just maybe mentally preparing you for a disappointment, even if you have to start these guys. So I'm going to go to you first, Justin. Who do you got for? Oh, hold on. We got to review our last week ones. I forgot. And this is good for you guys because you all missed your dark horses, but you all hit on your fool's gold. Gabe had Miles Sanders, didn't do much. Joseph had Tyler Lockett, which I don't like choosing Tyler Lockett as a fool's gold because even though he's not playing with Russell Wilson, he can still go off in a game. And Joe seemed to hit that one. And you chose the Ravens RBs. Look, Justin, if we combined all three Ravens RBs to be one player, you would have missed this. But you're saying you can't start either of them individually. Obviously, we can't combine them. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Le'Veon Bell, Devontae Freeman, and Latavius Murray all had a touchdown, right? And that goes to your point, right? Is that they're splitting with all these guys.
Yeah, granted, they all got touchdowns, so you might as not got burnt by them. Like Latavius had like 13 in PPR.
But they didn't win you your matchup.
Yeah. So it's just a disgusting display, and you wish one person just does all the work as always. But, that's not real life anymore. So, yeah.
Yep. There you go. RB workhorses. That's not real life anymore. We'll get that T-shirt made for you, Justin. All right, Justin, for your dark horse, your fool's gold for week 7, who do you got, man?
I thought it was fitting to go with a quarterback this week, given all the buys.
Very smart.
You're reaching, you're looking. A lot of people love to roster 2 quarterbacks, so you're like, well, why can't I get someone in the outside of the top 12 fringe? But people roster 2 quarterbacks just to block you and just for this reason specifically. So you look at juicy matchups and you see Daniel Jones running around, and they lost wide receivers, I believe. They're not a good team. They're going to go play against a Carolina defense that's, I would say, decent, middle of the pack-ish, but he's just not the right option. I rather go Jameis Winston at Seattle. I rather go Tua and try to ride a hot streak. Just avoid Daniel Jones. That team's just not good. He's had a nice start to the year, but he's pretty much fell off a decent amount since then. So don't look at just overall numbers. Like, you're telling me against a Dallas offense, you lose 20 to 44 and only throw up 13 attempts. I don't even know what happened that week. Then they played the Rams. They got 38 dropped on them. You think you should air it out. He did air it out. He threw 51 times. His fantasy production was 4 points, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Saquon's great. That running game, when they lost him, it changed them again, like forcing – the teams aren't stupid. You're not going to be running as much now. You're going to be forced to throw. He threw 3 picks. Like, it's not a wise choice. Don't look at overall fantasy points because this is mistelling. There's better options for this bye week, whether avoid Daniel Jones.
Yeah, no, that is a good one. And especially because at the start of the season, we had some surprises like Derek Carr, Daniel Jones. They were performing really, really well. So people were rostering them, and now Daniel Jones was questionable, and maybe those people who were rostering him were thinking they could start him when he comes back, and you're saying don't start him. So that's a good call, Justin. I would definitely look elsewhere. And look, that's tough to say, especially with this Bimageddon going on with quarterbacks. It's tough to say bench a guy like that, but I think you're on the right track there. All right, so my fool's gold for week 7, and this one hurts me. I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it. And this is Michael Pittman Jr. of the Indianapolis Colts. Justin, I love this guy. You love him too. He's a beast. I think he's, by the end of this year, I think we're going to be like, wow, Michael Pittman's a back-end wide receiver 1. I personally still feel that way. But what I will say is this week, and I'm not being biased because he's playing the San Francisco 49ers. I just think this is going to be a low-scoring game, a low-volume game. And look, they played Houston last week, the Colts did. And Houston on Yahoo is 28th against, or the pass is 28th against them. So for some reason, receivers haven't been able to get it done against Houston, which is surprising. But Michael Pittman, we know Houston is not a good team. And I don't know why Michael Pittman had 3 targets, 2 catches for 35 yards. Coming off of that game, and then we saw the Arizona Cardinals game with the San Francisco 49ers back in week 5. And that was just a slugfest and a very low scoring game. Neither team could get it going. I think it's going to be a very similar game script to that in this game. And look, this can come to bite me. I would not be surprised at all if the Colts just have nothing going and they have to rely on Michael Pittman. But I would just, and this is tough because we talked about all the bye weeks and all the replacements. If you probably are starting Michael Pittman Jr. if you have him. I'm pretty sure most people are. But a lot of people play in 10-team leagues. That's the normal casual size. And while there are a lot of bye weeks, there are some teams who aren't dealing with bye weeks. It just happened to be the case. In one of my 10-team leagues, I have Najee Harris and Josh Allen on a bye week, but other than that, like the rest of my team is ready to go. So I'm starting Jalen Waddle against Atlanta over Michael Pittman Jr. So that's giving you an example. I would rather start Jalen Waddle against Atlanta, where I think it's going to be a high-scoring shootout, rather than start Michael Pittman Jr. in this game that I'm projecting to be a low-scoring game. And does that make sense, Justin? Well, like, I know most people can't bench Michael Pittman Jr., but in that scenario specifically, I am.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to follow a trend, if you think Hilton backs them down, if you think they just fully embrace JT, I can see that. I can also see him popping a 50-yard touchdown, but you don't bet on that, So, I understand that pick.
Yeah, definitely. And again, this is one of those, like I said, it's not necessarily you must bench, but I would just mentally prepare yourself a little bit there for Michael Pittman Jr. All right, so we got a couple more comments in the comment section, and we'll get out of here. We got like a whole thread going on with Bambo here. So Bambo goes on to say, I had an idea. So my league mate has Swift and has Dalvin and Zeke outside of his wide receiver one. His depth is very inconsistent. So I was just thinking if I could pull off a deal of Keenan and Moss for Swift. Ooh, that's a lot. I mean, I wrote back, yes, do that if you can. That's a lot for Swift, but see if you can get a lesser wide receiver back in that deal, and I'd do it.
Yeah, if you can get a lesser wide receiver, I'd agree. If you can just start with Zeke, maybe he'll do that. But Swift is underrated. He hasn't had big pop-up games. He's not that goal line killer rushing in for 2-3 touchdowns a game like some of the big dogs are. But he's top of the pack considering everything that's going on. But I would get a low-end wide receiver like we've spoke about, and I'd pull that.
Yeah, definitely. And to close us out, Gabriel Miramontes. Gabe, what up, man? Gabe from the First Round Fantasy Podcast. He says, my boys. And then he says, Amon-Ra St. Brown or Christian Kirk. Two guys we talked about today, but not together. What do you think about that one?
Oh, man. Again, I'll go Kirk for the upside. That boy is willing to drop like 2 touchdowns on 70-yard catches. So Amon Brown and the Lions, I'm not a big fan of that offense overall, but I do like him. I go Kirk for the upside given the matchup.
Yeah, and this is similar to when we talked about the Rashad Bateman earlier, except that we've seen Christian Kirk do it, maybe inconsistently, but we've seen Kirk do it. Better offense, better quarterback, more touchdowns to be scored, more offense to be produced. I would go Christian Kirk for sure. All right, we got another comment in here. Love it, from Cole Pierce. Thank you for joining us. Should I trade Patterson for AB since my wide receivers are weak? I have Kamara, Swift, Henderson at RB, DJ Moore, AJ Brown, Marvin Jones at wide receivers. So basically, for those who don't know, Cordero Patterson for Antonio Brown since my wide receivers are weak. What do you think about that one, Justin?
That's really weird, but automatically I'm going to hold. That team is sporadic, even though AB is almost back in action. But you just saw a great game from A.J. Brown, and he didn't even do that great, but he was able to perform well. You have DJ Moore and Marvin Jones is undercover, but the reason I won't do this fully is that I believe in every league, Cordero is listed as wide receiver and running back. So that's kind of like unseen flex that you don't want to really trade, and it's not like he hasn't done anything. The dude's playing really well. That team needs offensive help. I'd hold on this trade. It's an even trade, but consider your situation of having DJ and AJ Brown, and then Kamara and Swift and Hendo. I would maybe aim for a better wide receiver if you really wanted to trade Patterson, because your running backs are sweet. They're going to play Patterson as a running back, so use him as a running back to trade for a wide receiver. You know the common rule, like a bad running back is worth a decent receiver just because the fact they're a running back. So you have a good running back, get a good wide receiver that you can trust week to week.
Yeah, definitely. And look, Antonio Brown he's been surprising this year, a few blow-up games. And it really does depend on Patterson, because in some formats, he's listed wide receiver, running back. You can start him in both slots. And we play in Yahoo for most of our leagues, so that's what we can do there. But I know in other formats, he's listed as one or the other, which is weird. And it might be weird that Yahoo lists him as both. But it depends, because if you can start Patterson in your wide receiver spot if he's available, if you're able to do that. So I would maybe hold on that. I think you can get a better deal done, because Patterson, while he might not be like blow up all season, he's seeming to be very, very solid in the Atlanta offense.
He would be considered generally a running back overall, no?
Yeah, he is. Oh, okay. So his league, Cole Pierce says, thanks, y'all. I just wish my league allowed me to start at wide receiver. Okay, so that does change it a little bit. That makes, if you really need a wide receiver, it's close. It is close. And I've heard some people say they prefer Antonio Brown over Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I don't personally feel that way, but if you there's expert fantasy analysis saying that.
I might feel that way because 7 targets, 3 targets, 11 targets, 8 targets, 13 targets. Granted, their last 2-3 weeks were against garbage Philadelphia, garbage Miami, not so good New England. Antonio Brown might finish top 10, but you tell me, would you rather have Antonio Brown rest of the season or do Deebo Samuels or Jamar Chase?
I would rather have Deebo or Chase, to be honest.
Really? Like that easy to you? Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. So if you're explaining it, that we're basically saying that you want the Bucks' best wide receiver, so that's hard to pass up on when you're catching passes from Tom Brady.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you look at it that way, then I would make this trade, honestly. If you look at it that way, and especially he's stuck. He can only start Patterson in the RB slot. So
yeah,
that's interesting. But
I'll be honest, his wide receivers are very good. I mean, his running backs are very good and deep. If he wants to do this trade and you truly believe in AB, then do it. But maybe you can trade for Justin Jefferson on a bye week. You know what I mean? Maybe you can go and get, you're not getting Cooper Kupp, you're not getting Tyreek, Devontae Adams, but I don't think people realize how good Deebo is, how good JJ's been, how good CD's been. But maybe you can sneak up a level. Try it. Maybe Stephon Diggs, because people aren't too high on him. That might work. But these are reaches. But if you believe in AB, I go AB.
Yeah, and real quick to close out the show, we'll get out of here. He just asks, continues with Cole Pierce, any other guys you would trade Cordell Patterson for? It's tough because I don't have Cordell in any league, so it's hard for me to look at it from that perspective. But I think that's the right range. An Antonio Brown type guy, I think that's the right range, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of hard to come up with off the top of our head, a player that you can trade for. But yeah,
I'd go
like a wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 2, maybe back-end wide receiver 1 if you can.
Yeah, but that's AB. That's literally AB.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. So anyone in that same range as AB.
Like, would you rather have AB or Cooper, AB or McLaurin? You know what I mean? If this is the real AB, then you hit the jackpot. But it's just hard with so many big dogs over there. Every week's different, it seems.
Absolutely. And look, teams are more running back needy than they are wide receiver needy. So I think you can definitely use that as leverage and get a decent wide receiver. I would, if you can get Brown at this point, maybe do it. It sounds like we're agreeing with that. But look at those other wide receivers. Maybe some wide receivers that you like a little bit more than Antonio Brown. Try to go after those guys and see if you can get them. If not, then go ahead and take Brown, I would say. All right. Well, that's going to do it this week for the First Round Fantasy Podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please go ahead and follow us on Instagram, Twitter. Find us on Spotify and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Pick yourself up a First Round Fantasy t-shirt at TeePublic. Just search for First Round Fantasy. We got our new logo up there as well. You can get a new t-shirt. I still haven't ordered one, but I'm going to order a bundle here coming up real quick. Thank you for joining me, Justin, today. I would say where can they find you on Twitter, but you do not have a Twitter. You stay off the grid when it comes to that. But you can, for my fantasy thoughts, you can find me at Jacob FRF Sports, and I'll be tweeting about fantasy and stuff there. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.